my name is Chloe Bennett. I'm 30 years old, and apparently my career is the family secret no one should discuss at dinner. My older brother lifted his wine glass and spoke loudly enough for everyone at the private dining table to hear. Don't ask her about her career, he said. It's too embarrassing. A few relatives laughed uncertainly. My mother stared at her plate. My father adjusted his napkin as though the pattern had suddenly become fascinating. Across from me, my brother's new girlfriend remained silent. He had spent years telling people I was a glorified construction worker who wandered around dirty job sites wearing a plastic helmet. That evening he added that I had wasted my education, embarrassed our parents, and built a business that would collapse the moment real professionals examined it. My sister leaned back with a satisfied smile. She had supplied him with most of those lines. I could have defended myself. Instead, I placed my fork beside my plate and reached for my coat. Arguing would have given them exactly what they wanted, another opportunity to portray me as emotional, unstable, and desperate for approval. Then my brother's girlfriend finally moved. She looked at him, then at my sister, and finally at me. So, she said carefully, should I tell them who signed my paycheck this morning? My brother's face turned white. My sister stopped smiling. Neither of them knew that the woman they had invited to witness my humiliation had spent the previous 6 weeks examining a financial trail that led directly back to them. And before that dinner ended, my family would learn that my supposedly embarrassing job controlled far more than a construction site. Before I tell you what my brother said next and what happened after I stood up to leave, tell me, what time is it where you are right now? And where are you watching from? I want to know how far the story travels to understand why one sentence destroyed my brother's confidence. You need to understand what my family believed about me. Growing up, I was the child who came home with dirt on her knees, dismantled broken appliances, and asked contractors why certain walls could not be moved. My older sister, Amanda, collected awards, spoke confidently to adults, and knew how to turn every achievement into a performance. My brother, Jake, followed her everywhere. Amanda was the star. Jake was her loyal audience. I was the strange younger sister who preferred floor plans to family photographs. Our parents did not openly say that Amanda was their favorite, but children notice patterns adults think they are hiding. When Amanda won a debate tournament, we held a dinner in her honor. When I won a statewide engineering competition, Dad told me not to become arrogant. When Jake was accepted into a private university, Mom mailed announcements to relatives. When I earned a scholarship, she reminded me that scholarships sometimes disappeared if students could not keep up. Amanda learned early that praise was a resource. If I received any, she redirected the conversation toward herself. She called it teasing, but the jokes always carried the same message. Whatever I accomplished was temporary, unattractive, or socially inferior. At 23, I joined a regional construction firm as an assistant project coordinator. I was the only woman regularly assigned to active sites, and some subcontractors assumed I was there to take notes or order lunch. I learned to read contracts more carefully than anyone in the room. I studied scheduling, materials, zoning, labor costs, environmental standards, and risk management. When a senior manager blamed me for an error caused by his own calculations, I produced every email, revision, and timestamp. He was dismissed 2 months later. I was promoted. That should have been the moment my family began taking me seriously. Instead, Amanda told everyone I had advanced because the company needed a woman in a hard hat for publicity. Jake laughed so hard he repeated the joke at Christmas. I eventually left that company and founded Bennett Urban Renewal, a construction and redevelopment firm specializing in neglected public buildings, affordable housing, and Environmentally efficient community. Spaces. I started with 4 employees, 1 rented office, and a contract to repair. A neighborhood health clinic no larger than my parents' house. During Snorts the first year I paid myself less than my site supervisors. During the second, we renovated 2 schools without closing either campus. By the 5th year, we employed more than 100 people and managed projects in 3 states. My parents knew none of this because Amanda had already written the family's preferred version of my life. According to her, my company was a fragile startup constantly begging investors for money. Jake described me as a contractor who had confused temporary success with a career. Whenever relatives asked about my work, Amanda answered before I could. She fixes old buildings, she would say, dismissively. It's sweet, but obviously not something with long-term potential. At first, I corrected her. Then I stopped. Every defense became evidence that I was insecure. What I did not know was that her contempt had moved beyond family jokes. 6 months before that dinner, my firm competed for the largest contract in its history, a $74 million redevelopment of the Ashford Municipal Complex. Snorts. The project included affordable apartments, a public health wing, child care facilities, and commercial space. For small businesses, we spent nearly a year preparing the proposal. Our design reduced projected energy costs by 32% and preserved 2 historic structures. The city had planned to demolish 3 days before the final presentation. Confidential pages from our bid appeared anonymously in the inboxes of 2 rival firms. They undercut our numbers almost line by line. Someone also sent the city an allegation that my company had concealed safety violations. The accusation was false, but the city postponed its decision pending an investigation. One lender froze part of our credit line. Rumors spread among subcontractors. Within a week, I went from preparing to expand my company to wondering whether I would have to delay payroll. Only 5 people had access to the complete proposal. Every one of them passed an internal review. Then our cybersecurity team discovered that the leaked documents had not come from our system. They had been photographed from a printed copy. I remembered bringing one copy to my parents' anniversary weekend. I had locked it inside my suitcase because I planned to review the final cost tables before bed. Amanda had asked what I was working on. Jake had joked that no one wanted to steal my little building project. At the time, I had ignored the comment. After the leak, I stopped ignoring anything. Back at the restaurant, Jake stared at his girlfriend as though she had begun speaking a language no one else understood. What are you talking about? He asked. Her name was Veronica Shaw. Until that evening, my family knew her as a financial compliance specialist. Jake had met at a charity reception. He had introduced her as intelligent, well-connected, and finally, someone successful enough to understand his world. Amanda had immediately approved of her. What Jake had not bothered to learn was that Veronica had left her previous employer 2 months earlier. He also did not know where she worked now because, according to him, compliance jobs were all basically the same. Veronica folded her hands on the table. I'm talking about Bennett Urban Renewal. Amanda's eyes snapped toward
me.
You hired her? I accepted a position as Director of Ethics and Regulatory Compliance. Veronica corrected. Chloe approved my employment agreement, and her signature authorized my first payroll deposit this morning. The silence changed. Moments earlier, it had been the silence of people allowing a humiliation to continue. Now it was the silence of people realizing they had misunderstood who possessed authority. Jake gave a short, nervous laugh. That doesn't make sense. Chloe runs a small construction company. Bennett Urban Renewal is not small. Veronica replied. It currently has 143 employees, 6 active municipal contracts, and a development portfolio valued at more than $200 million. My Father looked at me sharply. 200 million? That's the value of the projects under management, I said. It isn't personal income. Amanda recovered first. She always did. So, she hired her brother's girlfriend to impress us. That's hardly professional. I met Chloe before I met Jake, Veronica said. I was part of the outside team reviewing the Ashford allegations. The color left Amanda's face so quickly that even my mother noticed. Veronica continued. The city required an independent compliance review after receiving claims about concealed safety violations. My former firm handled the first stage. I saw the evidence, concluded the allegation was fabricated, and later accepted Chloe's offer to establish a permanent compliance division. Jake turned to me. You knew she was my girlfriend? Not until she arrived tonight, I said. That was true. Veronica and I had worked mostly through video conferences. She had mentioned seeing someone new, but never said his name. When she entered the restaurant holding Jake's arm, I had felt the universe make a cruel joke. I still did not know whether her presence would protect me or create another weapon for my siblings. Amanda picked up her water glass, but her hand shook against it. This is ridiculous. We were having a family dinner. No one needs a corporate presentation. You made Chloe's career the subject of the dinner, Veronica reminded her. I'm correcting inaccurate information. Jake's expression hardened. You've known me for 2 months. You've known her for what? 6 weeks? Don't interfere in something you don't understand. Veronica looked disappointed. Rather than intimidated, I understand that you invited me here and then humiliated your sister to make yourself look important. That's not what happened. You told 11 people that her work was embarrassing. It was a joke. My chest tightened at the familiar phrase. Amanda had used it for years. Every insult became a joke the moment I objected. I reached for my coat again. I'm leaving. Amanda's chair scraped backward. Of course you are. Chloe always leaves when the conversation becomes uncomfortable. I stopped. She smiled, believing she had regained control. You build an image, refuse to answer questions, and expect everyone to applaud. But some of us know the truth. What truth? I asked. That your company is being investigated. That lenders are nervous. That your biggest proposal is falling apart. Yet you walk in here pretending to be some powerful executive. No one moved. Amanda had just referenced details I had never shared with my parents. I placed my coat over the back of my chair. How did you know my lender froze part of our credit line? For the first time that evening, Amanda had no immediate answer. Jake looked at her, then at me. She probably heard it somewhere. Where? I asked. The freeze was confidential. The bank, our attorney, and 4 executives knew. Amanda's voice became sharp. People talk. Your industry isn't as secretive as you think. Veronica reached into her bag and placed a thin folder on the table. People do talk. They also leave records. Jake stood up. What is that supposed to mean? It means the allegation against Chloe's company contained wording copied from an internal draft that was never submitted to the city. The photographed bid pages were accessed from a device connected to a residential network registered to your parents. My mother covered her mouth. Amanda stared at the folder but did not touch it. Veronica turned to me. I wasn't planning to discuss this here, but after what they said, I don't think silence is protecting anyone except the people who hurt you. I looked at Amanda and remembered every time she had warned me not to embarrass the family. Every birthday when she had turned my work into a joke. Every holiday when Jake had repeated her version of my life. For years I had believed their cruelty was about insecurity and competition. Now I wondered whether it had also been preparation. If they convinced everyone I was incompetent before my company failed, no. One would question the story afterward. Open the folder, Veronica said. The first page was a timeline. It listed the date I had brought the Ashford proposal to my parents' house, the time Photographs of the document were created and the time an anonymous email account sent them to two competing bidders. The second page contained security data from the printer, application on my father's home network. Someone had used the scanner at 1:14 in the morning. The third page showed a partial payment from one of the competing firms to a consulting company called ALC Strategic Advisory. Amanda's full name was Amanda Louise Carter. My father leaned forward. Is that your company? Amanda's answer came too quickly. It's a consulting entity. Plenty of professionals use them. For what? I asked. Independent market research. Veronica slid another page from the folder. The rival bidder described the payment as a referral fee for strategic procurement intelligence. I didn't control how they labeled an invoice. How much did they pay you? My mother whispered. Amanda's jaw tightened. This is none of your business. The amount appeared on the next page. $48,000. My mother stared at the number. My father looked as though someone had removed the floor beneath him. Jake pushed the folder away. Even if Amanda consulted for another company, that doesn't prove she stole anything. Correct, Veronica said. The payment alone does not. She removed a printed message exchange. I recognized Jake's phone number at the top. The messages were between him and Amanda. Amanda, did she bring the final book? Jake, yes, black binder in her room. Amanda, keep everyone downstairs after midnight. Jake, I still think this could come back on us. Amanda, not if the complaint is anonymous. Her company is already overextended. 1. Delay and the bank panics. Jake and Ashford goes to Mercer. Amanda, Mercer gets the contract. I get the advisory fee. You get your introduction to their investment division. Jake sat down slowly. The messages continued. He had not photographed the documents, but he had told Amanda where they were. He had kept my parents talking in the kitchen while she went upstairs. Later, he had helped her draft the anonymous safety allegation using information I had once shared with him about a minor incident that had been corrected and formally closed. My father read the exchange twice. You tried to destroy your sister's company for a job interview? It wasn't like that, Jake said. Then explain what it was like. I replied, his face twisted with frustration. You don't understand how hard it is to advance in finance without the right people opening doors. Mercer's investment group controls opportunities I've worked toward for years. Amanda said they only needed competitive information. She said no one would lose their job. 143 people work for me. I didn't know your company was that large. The statement hit me harder than his insult. He had been willing to damage my livelihood because he had never bothered to learn how many other livelihoods depended on it. Amanda stood. Stop making Jake responsible. He didn't send anything. I handled the communication. You fabricated a safety complaint, Veronica said, that exposed the city to procurement fraud and interfered with a public contract. Amanda's composure finally fractured. Mercer was going to win anyway. Chloe's proposal was too ambitious. I accelerated an inevitable result. You copied my design. I said it was not your design. Your architects created it. They created it under my company, through contracts my firm financed. Amanda rolled her eyes, but panic now lived beneath the gesture. You always make everything sound heroic. You renovate buildings. You aren't saving civilization. No, I said. But the Ashford project included 96 affordable apartments and a clinic, expected to serve 14,000 patients a year. You delayed that project to collect $48,000. Our aunt, who had laughed when Jake called my career embarrassing, quietly pushed her chair away from Amanda. My mother began crying. How could you do this to your sister? Amanda spun toward her. Don't act shocked. You spent our entire childhood comparing us. We never told you to sabotage her. You didn't. Have to. Amanda's voice cracked. Every time Chloe struggled, you called her brave. Every time I succeeded, you expected more. She got sympathy. I got pressure. I had waited years to hear the reason behind Amanda's resentment. When it finally came, it did not heal anything. Pain could explain why she hated me, but it could not erase what she had done. You are the person everyone celebrated. I said. You snorts received the parties, the praise, and the introductions. I learned not to mention my accomplishments because you mocked them. That's because you always wanted to prove you were better than me. No, Amanda, I wanted to exist without being punished for it. For 1 second, her expression softened. Then she saw the relatives watching and rebuilt the mask. This folder is intimidation, she declared. Chloe brought her employee here to threaten us. I didn't know Veronica would be here, I said. Amanda turned to Jake. Tell them. But Jake was staring at Veronica. Were you dating me to investigate my family? No, Veronica said. I had no idea you were connected to Chloe until tonight. You told me your sister worked for a struggling contractor. You never mentioned her name because you always called her the family. Disappointment. A few relatives looked away. Veronica removed one final page. But after hearing your comments, I checked the phone number attached to the messages. It matches the number you gave me. Jake's face collapsed. I closed the folder. The city investigators already have copies, don't they? Yes. Veronica said. They received them yesterday. Amanda's eyes widened. You reported me. I reported evidence. Veronica replied. My sister's vulnerability disappeared. What replaced it was pure rage. You self-righteous little fraud, she hissed. At me. You think a few contracts make you powerful? I can destroy your reputation before this investigation goes anywhere. I stood and faced her. You already tried. Then I put on my coat and walked out. The restaurant door had barely closed behind me when Jake followed. Chloe, wait. I kept walking toward the corner. Rain had begun falling, cold and thin against the pavement. He caught up and stepped in front of me. You can't let this become a criminal case. I'm not controlling the investigation. You own the company that filed the complaint. The city opened the investigation after Amanda submitted a false allegation. My company cooperated. He lowered his voice. She made a mistake. She photographed confidential documents, sold them to a competitor, fabricated safety claims, and interfered with a public bid. She's our sister. So am I. He looked away. There it was. The truth beneath years of family loyalty. To Jake, Amanda's place in the family was permanent. Mine was conditional. I was expected to absorb the damage so everyone else could remain comfortable. You told her where the proposal was, I said. You helped her create the complaint. I didn't know she would take it that far. You wrote that one delay would make the bank panic. I was angry. You had just refused to introduce me to your lender. I remembered the conversation. Jake had asked me to recommend him for an investment strategy position despite having no experience in municipal development. When I said I could not risk a professional relationship by making an unqualified referral, he accused me of being selfish. So you decided to create a banking crisis for my company? I wanted leverage. I thought you'd ask for help, and then I could connect you with Mercer. It would have benefited everyone. The arrogance of it silenced me. He had helped create a disaster because he imagined himself arriving later as my rescuer. I have spent my entire life watching Amanda manipulate you, I said. But you're not a child anymore. She didn't force you to send those messages. Jake's expression hardened. What do you want? An apology? Fine. I'm sorry. But if this becomes public, I lose my position. Did you worry about my employees losing theirs? That was different. No. It was simply happening to people you considered less important. A car stopped beside the curb Veronica stepped out of the restaurant and approached us. Jake turned on her. You've ruined everything, I disclosed. Evidence of misconduct, she replied. Your choices created the consequences. You could have warned me, so you could delete the messages. I would have explained. You had dinner to explain. Instead, you mocked Chloe's career in front of your family. He stared at her. Are we done? Yes. The answer was immediate. Jake's face tightened, but Veronica did not look away. She returned the apartment key he had given her and placed it in his hand. My brother stood in the rain holding the key, his job in danger, his relationship over, and his family finally aware of what he had done. Yet the part of me trained by years of guilt still wanted to comfort him. I hated that instinct. I hated how easily wounded people could be taught to rescue the ones who hurt them. I left. With Veronica, the investigation accelerated over the following 2 weeks. The city confirmed that the allegations against my company were false and restored us to the Ashford bidding process. Our lender reopened the credit line. After reviewing the evidence, Mercer Development, the rival firm, claimed a rogue executive had paid Amanda without authorization, but financial records contradicted that statement. The payment had been approved by a senior vice president. Amanda worked as communications director for a national real estate association. Her job required her to represent ethical development practices, disclose conflicts of interest, and maintain relationships with municipal agencies. Once investigators contacted her employer, she was placed on administrative leave. She responded by doing exactly what she had threatened to do. An anonymous account began posting claims that I had manipulated the procurement process, hired my brother's girlfriend to spy on my family, and fabricated evidence to eliminate a competitor. The posts included old photographs of me at job sites and captions describing me as unstable, vindictive, and obsessed with becoming a construction celebrity. Several industry blogs repeated the accusations. One local commentator questioned whether I had exaggerated my company's success. My employees received hostile messages. A brick was thrown through the window of our smallest field office. Amanda denied involvement. Unfortunately for her, she scheduled the posts through the same public relations management platform she used for work. Metadata linked the anonymous account to her corporate login. My attorneys advised me not to respond emotionally, so I did not record an angry video, publish family messages, or argue with strangers online. We released a 3-paragraph statement confirming our cooperation with investigators. Then we continued working. 3 weeks later, the city scheduled the final Ashford presentation at its annual redevelopment forum. Mercer was removed from consideration, but another qualified company remained. The presentation would be attended by municipal leaders, investors, journalists, and representatives from Amanda's professional association. My team expected me to focus only on the proposal. I intended to. Then Amanda contacted the event organizers and requested press credentials through a consulting firm she had created after being suspended. She clearly believed that if she confronted me publicly, she could regain control of the story. For once, I did not try to stop her. The redevelopment forum took place inside a converted train terminal that my first employer had restored 15 years earlier. Hundreds of people filled the main hall. Renderings of new housing developments covered enormous display boards. Investors moved between presentations, while city officials answered questions from journalists. I stood backstage reviewing our final figures when Veronica approached. She's here, she said, alone, with an attorney and a freelance camera operator. Amanda was not attending to listen. She was manufacturing a scene. Has the city been informed? Yes. Security knows about the restraining conditions. She can remain in public areas unless she approaches restricted documents or disrupts the program. My pulse accelerated, but I nodded. 6 weeks earlier, the possibility of facing Amanda publicly would have terrified me. Now I understood that her confidence depended on controlling what others
knew.
She had lost that control. Our presentation began at 11 o'clock. I explained how the Ashford complex could be rebuilt without displacing current residents. Our lead architect demonstrated the preserved historic structures. Our finance director described the local hiring commitments, and one of our site supervisors explained how prefabricated components would shorten construction by, for months. When the presentation ended, questions came from the review panel. The last question was from a journalist seated near the center aisle. Ms. Bennett, recent allegations suggest your firm obtained favorable treatment after hiring a compliance officer with a personal connection to your family. How? Do you respond? Amanda stood behind him, watching me. I could have refused to comment. Instead, I answered calmly. Ms. Shaw was selected through a documented recruitment process before either of us knew she was dating my brother. Her qualifications were evaluated by our board and outside counsel. The city has reviewed that process. Every relevant document is available to investigators. The journalist nodded, and the allegations that the evidence against Mercer Development was fabricated? The evidence was collected by independent forensic specialists and municipal investigators. I did not create it, alter it, or release it publicly. Amanda stepped into the aisle. That's a carefully rehearsed lie. Every camera turned toward her. Security moved forward, but I raised my hand. Let her ask a question. Amanda appeared surprised. She had expected resistance. She could portray as fear. She faced me. Isn't it true that you have resented me for years and used this investigation to settle a family grudge?
No.
You expect everyone here to believe that your own sister suddenly decided to destroy you without a reason? I don't know every reason behind your decisions. I only know the actions documented in the evidence. You've always been jealous of me. A murmur moved through the room. Amanda seemed to hear encouragement instead of discomfort. She continued. You spent your childhood competing with me, then build a company so you could pretend you were more important than the rest of us. When your bid began failing, you found someone to blame. The old Chloe might have listed every childhood injury. She might have tried to prove that Amanda had always been cruel. But this was not a family argument anymore. It was a professional forum, and facts were stronger than history. Our original bid did not fail, I said. Its confidential pricing was sold to a competitor. A false safety allegation was then submitted using information taken from a closed internal report. I can't prove I submitted it. A man in the front row stood. He introduced himself as Deputy Inspector General for City Procurement. Ms. Carter, he said, you were instructed through counsel not to discuss evidence connected to the active investigation. Amanda froze. He continued, since you have chosen to make public statements, I need to clarify that investigators recovered the anonymous complaint's original draft from a cloud account registered to your consulting company. Her attorney pushed through the aisle. Amanda, stop talking. But humiliation had always made my sister reckless. That draft could have been planted. The inspector general remained composed. We also recovered your messages, negotiating payment, and a recorded call in which a Mercer executive asked whether your sister suspected the documents had been copied. The hall became silent. Amanda turned toward me with hatred so open that several people stepped back. You recorded me? I didn't, I replied. Mercer had recorded the call as part of its internal compliance system. When the company attempted to blame one executive, investigators obtained the archive. Amanda's attorney took her arm, but she pulled away. You think you've won, she shouted. Without me, no one in our family would have ever taken you seriously. I made you fight. I made you ambitious. No, I said. You made my life harder. I became successful despite you not. Because of you. Security escorted her from the hall as cameras followed. She tried to continue, speaking, accusing the city, Mercer, Veronica, and me of conspiring against her. Each accusation made the scene worse. The review panel resumed after a short recess. 2 hours later, the city announced Bennett Urban Renewal as the preferred developer for the Ashford Municipal Complex, subject to final contract approval. My employees erupted in applause. Some cried. I thought I would feel triumphant, but what I felt first was relief. The project was not revenge. It was work we had earned before Amanda tried to steal it. The revenge came through consequences she could no longer redirect. Amanda's employer terminated her for undisclosed conflicts of interest, misuse of corporate communication systems, and conduct damaging to the organization. Her professional association revoked her membership. The consulting payment was frozen, and prosecutors charged her with procurement, fraud, theft of trade secrets, and filing a false statement with a public agency. Mercer Development agreed to a multi-million-dollar civil settlement with my company and was barred from bidding on city contracts for 5 years. The senior vice president who approved Amanda's payment resigned and later entered a plea agreement. Jake's employer conducted its own review. Investigators found that he had used confidential information from 2 other acquaintances to impress potential clients. He was dismissed for misconduct because he cooperated and had not received Amanda's payment. He avoided the most serious criminal charge, but he was placed on probation after pleading guilty to unauthorized access and conspiracy to interfere with a commercial bid our parents paid for. His attorney, they asked me to write a letter describing him as a good person who had made one mistake. I refused. One mistake happens in a moment. Jake had made dozens of choices, locating my documents, distracting our parents, sending information to Amanda, helping draft the allegation, remaining silent while my company suffered, and humiliating me at dinner after knowing what he had done. A chain of decisions does not become an accident simply because consequences finally arrive. The Ashford contract received final approval. 4 months later, we broke ground in early spring. At the ceremony, city officials spoke about housing, healthcare, and local employment. I kept my remarks brief. I thanked my team, the community representatives, and the employees who had continued showing up while strangers online called our company fraudulent. I did not mention Amanda or Jake. For most of my life, they had occupied too much space in my achievements. Amanda either diminished them or claimed she had motivated them. Jake converted them into jokes. Leaving their names out of that moment felt more powerful than attacking them. Veronica remained at Bennett Urban Renewal. Her relationship with Jake had ended the night of the dinner, but she never treated her choice as an act of revenge. She said she had simply learned who he was when protecting his image mattered more to him than acknowledging the damage he had caused. Under her leadership, we strengthened every confidentiality procedure in the company. Printed bid documents were logged. External access required 2 levels of approval, and employees received training on social engineering risks. The betrayal became useful knowledge, though I would never call it a gift. My relationship with my parents changed. More slowly, Mom apologized for laughing at Amanda's jokes and allowing her to answer questions directed at me. Dad admitted he had underestimated my career because construction did not resemble the success he understood. They, Snorts, wanted immediate forgiveness because immediate forgiveness would have relieved their guilt. I told them forgiveness was not the same as restoring access. For 1 year, I attended no large family gatherings. I met my parents occasionally in public places where conversations could not easily become tribunals. When they spoke about Jake's suffering, I reminded them that I was not responsible for repairing consequences he had created. When they described Amanda's fear, I acknowledged it without volunteering to rescue her. Amanda eventually pleaded guilty to reduced charges. She avoided prison but received 3 years of supervised probation, 6 months of home confinement, and an order to pay restitution. Her legal expenses consumed most of her savings. The professional world she had spent years entering no longer trusted her. Companies that once invited her to moderate panels would not return her calls. She sent me a letter before sentencing clears throat. The first 2 pages explained her pressure, her insecurity, and her belief that I had always been protected by our parents. The 3rd page apologized. The 4th asked me to tell prosecutors that she had acted during an emotional crisis. I read it twice. Then I sent it to my attorney without responding. An apology that arrives with a request is not always false, but it is not always accountability either. Amanda still viewed remorse as a transaction. She wanted to exchange the right words for a lighter consequence. Jake contacted me after completing his probation requirements. We met at a coffee shop near one of my first renovation projects. He looked older and far less certain of himself. I was jealous, he said. Amanda told me your company was barely surviving, and I wanted to believe her because it made me feel better about where I was. I appreciated the honesty, but honesty after exposure is only the beginning. Why did humiliating me make you feel successful? I asked. He stared at his coffee. Because you never reacted the way I expected. The more you ignored us, the more I thought you believed you were better. I ignored you because defending myself never changed anything. I know that now. He apologized without asking me to contact an employer, repair his reputation, or forgive Amanda. That mattered. Still, I told him I was not ready to rebuild our relationship. He nodded. Do you think you ever will be? I don't. No. For once, he accepted an answer he did not like. A year after the groundbreaking, the first section of Ashford opened. The health clinic began serving patients on a Monday morning. The child care center opened 2 weeks later. Families moved into the first completed apartments before winter. On opening day, I stood inside the central courtyard watching children draw on a newly installed community chalk wall. One little girl wore a toy tool belt and told her father she wanted to build a hospital. Years earlier, Amanda had mocked the fact that I wore a hard hat. Jake had called my job embarrassing because it involved mud, noise, steel, and people who worked with their hands. Yet around me stood proof of what that work could create. Homes, classrooms, medical rooms, jobs, and a place where a child could imagine becoming a builder. I once believed revenge would feel like watching Amanda lose everything she valued. There were moments when her downfall satisfied the part of me that remembered every insult, but lasting peace did not come from her termination, her charges, or her public humiliation. It came when I stopped allowing her opinion to define the meaning of my life. Consequences were necessary. Without them, Amanda would have continued hurting people, but I did not need to become cruel to prove she had been cruel. I needed evidence, boundaries, patience, and the courage to let the truth move forward without softening it for the comfort of my family. My brother had called my career embarrassing in front of everyone. His girlfriend changed everything by telling the truth. But the truth was not that I secretly possessed money or power. The deeper truth was that my siblings had known almost nothing about me because they were more comfortable mocking the person they had invented. They believed their version so completely that they risked their careers and freedom trying to keep me beneath them. They failed, not because I destroyed them, but because their own choices became impossible to hide. Sometimes the strongest revenge is not shouting louder than the people who humiliated you. It is building something so real that their lives collapse the moment the Lights come on. So let me ask you one. Question. If your own family tried to destroy that career you had spent years building, would you forgive them after they faced the consequences? Or would you protect the life you created and walk away?